Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So fall is in full swing here. I'm trying to get this patio cleaned up and winterized because it's full of pots and dirt and rocks and everything else that's accumulated over the summer. So I'm trying to get that cleaned up, but I wanted to give you an update on some of the trees and show you how they're doing. I'm not going to do it out here though, just because it's really windy and there's traffic, and I think we can do better inside. So I'm going to set up the stool and bring them in one by one and just do like a 30-second to 2-minute update on each one, or something close to that. But before we do that, let me show you an update on the field outside of my apartment here. So they started construction on something. I think it's a storage unit, maybe. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because over the past few months that they've been doing this, it's been kicking up all kinds of dirt and dust, and that dirt and dust just comes over here and collects on the leaves of all these trees. So it's been kind of a challenge keeping everything in good shape and clean. So luckily it's not dusty today because it rained last night and I kind of patted the dirt down. So that's enough about dirt for one day. So let's get started. Let's take some in and take a look. All right, so I'm going to start with my Shantung maple. I've had this tree for, I think about 13 years. It was just a tiny little stick in a pot when I got it. So Shantung maples are actually not Japanese maples. They're actually Chinese maples. I rarely see them. See the big scar there from a root prune that I did a couple years ago. Actually, it's been about 4 or 5 years ago. I've got this one big, I guess you'd call it an aerial root. Can't decide if I like it or not, so I've just left it all this time. Eventually, I think I'll lose it. But it's got a good root flare at the base. I've got the tree at a slight lean. I do that a lot with trees that are in development, just to give the branches some movement as they grow, give it some character. I love the bark on these Shantung maples. Very fissured. It's got this one weird feature that I half love and half hate. Had some dieback up top here, and I've been sort of chipping away at it. I took a saw to it a month or so ago and got rid of some of the dead wood on there. I guess what I don't like is just how abruptly the bark sort of just stops. If you notice that top layer where the bark just sort of stops like that, that's a little weird to me. And it's always been concerning that moisture will get in there and maybe rot it out. Hasn't happened yet, but I do like that right there. You can see the live part of the bark on the right side and then the dead wood on the left. I like that. That's pretty cool. I just don't like how the bark goes up the trunk and then just sort of stops. So I'll have to figure something out for that, or maybe I'll just let nature take its course and we'll let nature figure it out and decide. But yeah, you see that there. That's always been a little concerning. I've always known that that's a spot for moisture to collect in and rot it out. And it could rot it out in a good way, it could rot it out in a bad way. You just never know. But otherwise, these Shantung maples are really cool trees. They're very drought tolerant. Moving on to my green ash. I've had this for maybe 10 years or so. It's kind of a twin trunk, almost a fusion going there. You can see it's got some color. Typically, these ash trees get a lot of great fall colors. But I think one thing you'll notice as we go through all these trees is that my trees are not going to have good color this year because they were on the balcony. They need a lot of sunlight. The more sunlight they get, the more color they get in the fall. So they didn't get as much direct sunlight as they normally would on the balcony. So this year, not going to be very colorful, I think. This tree struggled for a few years due to aphids. And then I repotted it last winter, and that solved it. It took off as soon as I did that. So it's kind of cool the way it's developing and turning out. This twin trunk that sort of wraps around itself like this. I like it. You'll see this big scar right there. I took a cutting from that, and you can also see the permanent marker where I was marking spots that I wanted to make some cuts. And this is the cutting. So I never knew until this year that you can actually root cuttings from an ash tree, but apparently you can. See the roots coming out of the bottom there. It's always a good sign. Yeah, I took these cuttings and put them in a thing of water, and they rooted. So this one, I haven't trimmed it or anything. I just let it go. It's got this one weird, kind of like a sucker branch coming out of the base there. So that'll have to go. Yeah, excited for what the future holds for this guy. Silver maples. I used to have a ton of silver maples. Now I have 3. A lot of them died on the balcony. Some I gave away. I had to give away a lot of trees this year too. You can see the growth coming out vigorously on one side, left side here in this particular case. That's the direction of the sun. So as it sat on the balcony, it just reaches toward the sun. I've only pruned it about once this year. I just kind of let it grow. I've had this for about 9 or 10 years. Got a few videos posted on its development over the last few years. I don't see many silver maple bonsais out there, and I don't think I've ever seen one of these S-shaped silver maples. So maybe it's a one of a kind, who knows. The root base at the bottom, it always reminds me of a hand, kind of like you're gripping a bowling ball. So you get the fingers there and then the thumb in the back. See that? One extra long pinky, I guess, on the left. Sort of been going for a root of a rock thing. We'll see how it goes. This is my loop-de-loop silver maple. Had this also for about 9 or 10 years. It's the same age as the last one. Much smaller though. It's been in a smaller pot. So it goes to show just what a difference a big pot makes in thickening the trunk. But that's okay. I still love it. It's got a lot of good character. It took a little finesse to get it into this loop-de-loop shape, and I had to do it when it was very young and flexible. But I bet you've never seen one like that. I know I haven't. I was surprised that it worked. And I'm more surprised that I haven't tried it again. I think I'm going to try it on a Siberian elm next. As you'll see coming up here, I've got a lot of Siberian elms to play with, but we'll get to that in a minute. In the meantime, it seems to be healthy, doing well. I'll probably take it out and look at the roots next spring. Siberian elms. So this is what I call the mother tree. This is my first Siberian elm right here, and it's the one that I've taken all the cuttings from and air layers and everything. So you can see, like the others and like the ones to come, you'll see that they are all growing very one-sided because of the sun direction on the balcony. So this one's got a lot of what I'm going to call cool flaws. Lots of cool flaws on it. It's got some inverse taper there and the big bulge in the middle you can see. It's got this big scar. That's where I did an air layer. And I'll show you the results of that here in a second. Got pruning scars all over it. And I'm always chipping away at that bulge in the middle. That's been there, and it was much, much worse. Much worse. I'll post a picture so you can see what that looked like originally. I've been chipping away at that over the years, and I've been making progress. There it is. So it's a cool flaw. I say cool because it's unique. It's interesting. It's ugly. It's just a cool flaw. We all have cool flaws, I guess. And there is the top, or what used to be the top. That is the result of the air layer. It came right off of that big ugly scar there, right there. So it is turning out to be a cool tree of its own. It's got a lot of great ramification. It's kind of sparse there in the back left side there, as you can see. Oddly enough, I think it's just because that's where the balcony railing is, and it just kind of didn't really grow into that. It grew over it. But I like it. It's got some scars as well. Otherwise, it's very, I'm going to say conventional in terms of it's got good taper. It goes from one trunk into two, two into four, four into eight, etc., etc. So it's following all the rules, all the bonsai rules. And like most elms, they just ramify very well. Here's the Siberian elm forest that I started about 5 years ago. It hasn't changed a lot this year. It really just sort of maintained. I've trimmed it a couple of times. I really like it. For whatever reason, I just really like this Siberian elm forest. I'm gonna switch up the positioning though next spring. Hopefully next spring. That tree on the left, I just don't like the way that it's sitting compared to the other two. It's kind of oddball. So I'm gonna try and fix that. And I'm gonna add some smaller Siberian elms into it as well. I've got lots of cuttings. Let's talk about cuttings. Here's some Siberian elm cuttings. So that's, this summer would have been year 2 on those two there. And the one in the back, year 3. So we're going for a slanting sort of S, I don't know what you'd call it. But they root very easily from cuttings. Here's some Amur maples. Going for a few different styles here. The style in front I call dead style. At least I think so. Actually, I don't know. You see some dye back there, so I guess it's still green. Just no leaves. It lost all its leaves a month or two ago and just never grew any back. Let's start with this one. Kind of just a traditional upright. Amur maples usually have great color in the fall. I'm talking bright red, very vivid. Small leaves, very similar to a trident maple. But again, being on the balcony, not getting exposure to full sun, I don't think it's going to have much color. I did see one red leaf. Look at that. Hang in there, little guy. There's another one. This one I'm doing another one of those gradual leaning S-shape type things. There's probably a name for it. I just don't know what it is. I wired this up last spring of 2021, and it bit into the bark pretty bad at the time. You can see some scarring there from that. So that was about 1.5 years ago that had happened. You can see it there. It'll go away. I caught it in time that it, had I left it too long, it would have just choked it out, I think. I don't know. I've never left it on to that point. Maybe it just grows around it, I guess. I don't know. I don't have the guts to try it. So those are my Amur maples. got some other seedlings too. We'll look at those next year. Here's my dwarf Alberta spruce. I did this December of 2019, I believe it was. Or maybe it was January of 2020. Last winter, January of 2022, I went out and just kind of checked on the trees. It was bitter cold, and I saw that the pot this was in had broken. So I scrambled and found a pot and put it in the pot with some soil and hoped for the best, and it recovered. Didn't really do any damage. I haven't pruned this even once in over a year. It was pretty scraggly and not doing well. Even before the pot broke, it just, for whatever reason, wasn't doing well. It was suffering. So I just wanted to let it grow, and it seems to be bouncing back now. It's still not full and vibrant and healthy, but I think it is recovering nicely and it's on its way. So again, I'm not going to prune it. I'm just going to let it go. It's got some areas of concern. It's got some bulging there at the bottom, and then there's a spot right kind of midway toward the top. There's Luna and Stony coming to investigate my work. They're very critical of my work. Okay, I guess this time they approve. You can see that bulging right there. Well, I wouldn't hold it still long enough. Hopefully you saw. Here's a random assortment. This is a Hinoki cypress. I won't dive into this too much because I'm going to make an actual video on this soon. I've got some progression clips that I'll show. Just a little Hinoki cypress. I've always thought they were cool. That one's got some interesting dieback. I gotta like it. Look for a video on that coming soon. For now, just a quick look at some of these. We've got a honey locust. I clipped all the thorns. These things have thorns. And they'll get you if you're not paying attention. So I clipped them all over the summer. And so far, I don't think they've grown back. So maybe that's all it takes. Maybe thorns don't grow back the way leaves do. I hope they don't, because I don't like them. This is an Eastern Dawn Redbud. A friend of mine gave me this a few years ago as a little tiny seedling. And they're just sort of like, they're not super, I don't think they grow super thick. They're just elegant looking little trees. Here's my Virginia creeper. It's seen better days. They also enjoy full sun. This did not get full sun. They would typically have a lot of berries, and the leaves would be much more colorful than they are. But otherwise, it's doing fine. I mean, these things are kind of like weeds in a way, so you almost can't get rid of them. It works in your favor sometimes. Here's my oak leaf sumac. This is another one that I found over the winter with its pot broken, just laying on the ground, kind of laying there waiting to be helped. So I did the same thing. I just went and grabbed the first pot I could find, put some soil in it, put that in it, put some rocks on it, and hoped for the best, and it lived. So this one is interesting. I have a weird relationship with this because it's really pretty. I'd like to put it in a better pot at some point, but otherwise really pretty. It's got this gnarly looking bark, cool leaves, which normally turn very colorful in the fall when they get full sun over the summer. This one's got some weird aerial roots, which I don't know if I'm keeping or not. The downside, they stink. When you cut, I mean, just cut a leaf, let alone pruning branches, they stink up the whole area. And last but not least, this is my Costco crab apple. It was much bigger. Try and post a picture here. When we moved to this apartment, I had to reduce size on everything. Did a trunk chop, put it in this smaller pot. Luckily it survived and it's doing fine. So I put that little stick there in the front, just so I can mark what I think is going to be the front, though I'm still a little undecided. I think this one's got some great potential. It's got good root flare at the bottom, a couple of flawed roots going in the wrong direction, but those are fixable. Got that one little bulge just sort of hangs over the top, which I don't know what to do with yet. But otherwise, it's got good taper. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good tree. I'll keep you updated on that. Overall, that's the long and short of my bonsai updates for this fall. I'm going to do a part 2 of my tropical indoor trees and the new grow tent that I've got them in. But thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night, everybody.